The storm came without warning. Well, that's not entirely true. There were warnings, weather alerts on phones, the local news breaking into regular programming, and the distant wail of sirens that had stood silent for years suddenly coming to life. But for Alex, it still felt like it came out of nowhere, just like the feelings he'd been trying to suppress for longer than he cared to admit. It was late September in the small coastal town of Bayview, where Alex had lived all his 28 years. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where secrets were currency and gossip traveled faster than the coastal winds that now threatened to tear the community apart. The meteorologists had been tracking Hurricane Eliza for days, but like most storms that threaten their slice of coastline, everyone expected it to veer off at the last minute. It always did, until it didn't. Alex stood on his porch, watching his neighbors hammered plywood over windows and loaded cars with essentials. The air felt different, heavy with moisture and anticipation. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Jake. It was always Jake at moments like this, as if he had a sixth sense for when Alex needed him most. You boarded up yet? Jake's voice was casual, masking concern. Just about to start, Alex lied, having done nothing to prepare. I'll be there in 10. Don't start without me. That was Jake. Always showing up, always inserting himself into Alex's life with an ease that both comforted and confused him. They'd been friends since childhood, but something had shifted in recent years. A lingering glance here, a touch that lasted too long there. Neither of them acknowledged it, creating an unspoken tension that hummed between them like the electricity in the storm-charged air. Jake arrived in 8 minutes, not 10, his old blue pickup loaded with supplies. He jumped out, all energy and motion, his dark hair already damp from the first drops of rain. At 30, Jake was still the same impulsive, live-in-the-moment spirit he'd been as a teenager, while Alex had grown increasingly cautious, measured, always calculating risks. You haven't done anything, Jake observed, surveying Alex's unprotected windows. I was getting to it. Jake just smiled, that crooked grin that made something in Alex's chest tighten. Sure you were. Come on, let's get this place battened down before we're swimming. They worked in tandem, a well-practiced routine from years of storm preparations. Jake handled the heavy lifting, his muscled arms straining against his t-shirt as he positioned plywood, while Alex followed with hammer and nails, securing everything in place. They moved around each other with the familiar choreography of people who know each other's rhythms. As they worked, the town's ancient storm siren began its mournful wail again, louder this time, more insistent. The sound crawled under Alex's skin, raising goosebumps despite the humid air. That thing always gives me the creeps, he muttered, driving a nail with more force than necessary. Jake paused, wiping sweat from his brow. Remember when we were kids and we used to think it was a monster coming to eat the town? Alex smiled despite himself. You were the one who thought that. I was the one who had to convince you it wasn't real at every drill. Yeah, well, you were always the brave one. Alex nearly laughed at that. If Jake only knew how much courage he lacked, how many words remained unspoken between them because of his fear. As they finished securing the last window, the sky opened up in earnest. Rain came down in sheets, driven sideways by gusts of wind that bent the palm trees along the street at alarming angles. The siren wailed again, competing with the growing roar of the storm. We should get inside, Alex said, gathering tools. Jake grabbed his arm, his grip firm. Actually, I don't think we should stay here. What? Why not? Your place is too close to the water. Storm surge is supposed to be bad. My cousin's place is empty. They evacuated inland yesterday. It's on higher ground, built after the new codes went into effect. Alex wanted to argue. He'd weathered plenty of storms in this house, but the intensity in Jake's eyes stopped him. Okay, he conceded. Let me grab some things. 10 minutes later, they were in Jake's truck, visibility almost zero as the wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. The streets were deserted now, everyone either evacuated or hunkered down. The truck lurched as a powerful gust hit them broadside. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea, Alex said, gripping the dashboard as Jake navigated around a fallen branch. Probably not, Jake admitted with a reckless grin. But when have my ideas ever been good ones? That was the thing about Jake. He leapt without looking, pulled Alex into adventures that he would never choose on his own, and somehow, they always survived. More than survived, Those moments with Jake, heart pounding and adrenaline coursing through his veins, were when Alex felt most alive. They were halfway to Jake's cousin's place when disaster struck. A massive oak, its roots loosened by the saturated ground, toppled across the road directly in their path. Jake swerved hard, the truck fishtailing before sliding into a shallow ditch. "You okay?" Jake asked immediately, reaching for Alex. "Fine. You?" "Never better," Jake said. But his attempt at bravado was undermined by the blood trickling from a small cut on his forehead where he'd hit the steering wheel. The engine had died and wouldn't restart. Outside, the storm was intensifying, the wind howling like a living thing. The siren continued its eerie wail, somehow audible even through the cacophony of the hurricane. "We can't stay here," Alex said, eyeing the trees swaying dangerously above them. Jake nodded, scanning their surroundings. "There," he pointed through the rain-streaked windshield. "The old bell tower." Alex followed his gaze to the stone structure about 100 yards away. It was part of an abandoned church that had stood empty for years, its congregation long since moved to a newer building across town. The bell tower was solid stone, built in the 1800s to withstand coastal storms. It was their best option. "Ready to make a run for it?" Jake asked, already reaching for the door handle. Alex nodded, though his heart hammered with fear. On three, they counted together, then threw open the doors and plunged into the storm. The force of it was staggering. Rain lashed at them like tiny needles, the wind so strong it nearly knocked Alex off his feet. Jake grabbed his hand, pulling him forward as they struggled toward the tower. By the time they reached it, they were both soaked to the skin and gasping for breath. The heavy wooden door creaked in protest as Jake shouldered it open, and they stumbled inside, collapsing against the wall as Jake forced the door shut against the wind. The interior was dark and musty, illuminated only by the occasional flash of lightning through the narrow windows high above. The space was small, maybe 10 feet in diameter, with a spiral staircase leading up to where the bell once hung. Water dripped from their clothes, forming puddles on the stone floor. "Well, this is cozy," Jake said, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. Alex laughed, a release of tension more than humor. "Only you would call this cozy." They settled on the floor, backs against the curved wall, shoulders touching. Outside, the storm raged, but in here, they were in the eye of their own private hurricane, the tension that had been building between them for years, circling and intensifying. "You're shivering," Jake observed after a few minutes of listening to the wind howl. "I'm fine," Alex insisted, but his chattering teeth betrayed him. Without warning, Jake shifted, wrapping an arm around Alex's shoulders and pulling him closer. "Body heat," he explained, though his voice had a slight tremor that had nothing to do with the cold. Alex stiffened momentarily, then relaxed into the embrace, telling himself it was just practical, just survival. But the warmth spreading through him wasn't just from Jake's body heat. They sat like that for what felt like hours, listening to the storm and the distant, persistent wail of the siren. In the dim light, with the world falling apart outside, it felt like they were the only two people left on Earth. "I've always hated that sound," Alex said eventually, needing to break the silence that had grown heavy with unspoken words. "The wind. The siren. It sounds like, I don't know, like the end of something." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Or the beginning," he said finally. "Depends on how you look at it." Alex turned to find Jake watching him, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "What do you mean? Sirens warn us of danger, yeah? But they also wake us up, make us pay attention to what's important." A particularly violent gust rattled the tower, and Alex instinctively pressed closer to Jake, who tightened his arm around him. "Like what?" Alex asked, his voice barely audible above the storm. Jake's free hand moved to Alex's face, his thumb gently tracing the line of his jaw. "Like the fact that life's too short and too unpredictable to keep pretending." "Pretending what?" But Alex knew. Of course he knew. "That I don't think about you all the time. That I don't want more than this, more than being your friend." The words hung between them, as tangible as the storm-charged air. Alex's heart pounded so hard he was sure Jake could feel it. "Jake, A deafening crack interrupted him as lightning struck nearby, illuminating the tower in a brief, brilliant flash. The subsequent thunder was so loud it seemed to shake the very stones around them. Alex flinched, instinctively turning his face into Jake's chest. It's okay, Jake murmured, his lips close to Alex's ear. Just hold still and hold me tighter. It wasn't a request so much as a plea, and something broke open inside Alex. All the fears and doubts that had kept him silent for so long suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the possibility of what they could be together. He lifted his head, finding Jake's eyes in the darkness. I've been holding still for years, he said. Watching you, wanting you, and never saying anything because I was afraid of losing what we have. Jake's smile was soft, intimate. You couldn't lose me if you tried. When their lips finally met, it felt like both the culmination of years of longing and the beginning of something entirely new. Jake's mouth was warm against his hands gentle as they cradled Alex's face. The kiss deepened, years of unspoken feelings pouring into the connection between them. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but in that moment, it felt like they were in the only place that mattered, this small, safe harbor they'd created together. They broke apart eventually, breathless, foreheads resting against each other. Jake laughed softly, the sound full of wonder. What? Alex asked, unable to stop smiling. Nothing. Just, it took a hurricane to get us here. Worth it, Alex said, surprising himself with his certainty. They spent the night in the tower, talking, kissing, discovering each other in ways they never had before. Jake told Alex about the first time he realized his feelings had changed, a summer day 3 years ago when they'd gone swimming and Alex had emerged from the water, laughing and shaking droplets from his hair. Alex confessed how he'd been jealous of every person Jake had dated, how he'd made excuses not to meet them because it hurt too much. As dawn broke, the storm began to subside. The wind died down to occasional gusts, the rain to a steady drizzle. The siren had stopped sometime during the night, leaving a strange silence in its wake. They ventured out to find a transformed landscape. Trees down everywhere, debris scattered across roads, but the town was still standing. People emerged from homes, assessing damage, already beginning the work of cleaning up. Jake took Alex's hand as they picked their way through the wreckage back toward his truck, which miraculously had suffered only minor damage. What happens now? Alex asked as they surveyed the town from the hill where they'd sought refuge. Jake squeezed his hand. We help rebuild. We figure this out. Us, I mean. We stop wasting time. People will talk, Alex said, thinking of the small-town gossip that would inevitably follow. Jake shrugged. Let them. Maybe they'll have something interesting to say for once. In the days that followed, they did help rebuild. They cleared debris from elderly neighbors' yards, distributed supplies, and worked alongside the community to restore Bayview. And yes, people talked, but mostly about how natural they seemed together, how everyone had been waiting for them to figure it out. 2 weeks after the storm, they sat on Alex's repaired porch, watching the sunset over the bay. Jake's arm was draped casually around Alex's shoulders, a position that now felt as natural as breathing. You know what I keep thinking about? Jake said, his fingers absently playing with the hair at the nape of Alex's neck. What's that? That storm siren. How much you hated it. Alex smiled. I don't hate it anymore. You were right. It was a beginning, not an end. Jake turned to face him fully. I love you. I think I have for years, but I was too scared to say it. Ironic, right? Me, scared of something. I love you too, Alex said, the words coming easily now. And for the record, I always knew you were braver than me. It just shows in different ways. As the last light faded from the sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lap of waves against the shore. The storm had changed everything. The landscape, their relationship, their understanding of what mattered. But some things remained constant. The town would rebuild, life would go on, and they would face whatever came next together. In the distance, the storm siren sounded. Just a test, a reminder of the system that kept them safe. Alex didn't flinch this time. Instead, he leaned into Jake's embrace, thinking about how sometimes the things we fear most are the very things that lead us to where we're meant to be. And sometimes, the most important instructions are the simplest ones. Hold still, and hold on tight to what matters. Total _char_count, 17,846.